The difficulty, the main difficulty now is getting boardroom agreement. And it's often not about the actual logo or the identity design, the design bit. It's much more to do with the strategy and the direction in which a company is traveling, company or organization. And that is difficult. And that is not design, that is much closer to management consultancy. I spend a lot of my time doing that. Now you can kind of ignore that if you want, but you will not, it'll come up, I'm sure, this weekend. Yeah. You can ignore it if you want, but then you are just basically relegated to being a logo jockey. You know, hello, we've decided what we want, can we have this kind of logo, please? If you take the decision to go into the boardroom and interact with the powers that be, then you will have much more control and they will trust you and you will be able to do something interesting, but you can't have one without the other. So that's the biggest challenge. Funnily enough, the designing of logos or the finding of a visual solution, that's the best bit. That's the fun bit. That's still the fun bit. Yes, often, yeah, and I think that what we, Johnson Banks and some other UK companies have been and maybe a couple of Dutch companies, have been at the vanguard of treating identity in a much more broad way. So that A, more strategic, and B, more flexible. So there might be identities and logo systems that change and modulate and kind of change in space and in time. And I think the traditional idea of here is your logo, stick it in the corner. Yes, I think that people have got a bit bored of that. You'd be amazed how many people still do that, of course, and you still have people judging you on this little thing that's that big. That's quite a challenge, actually, because you're trying to sum up all of the aspirations and the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and vision of a company in something 40 pixels square. It's very, very hard. Yeah, that's really hard. I think that, yeah, I think that people are attempting to try and bring design thinking into management, and conversely, management or marketing thinking into design, and it's still very early days, and it's difficult because the two disciplines don't necessarily interact that well. And yes, some people do criticize it, and yes, some people think, what's the point? But I do think it's useful because often, most of the time, a designer will graduate with no idea about business or marketing. Conversely, a business or a marketing student will graduate with some ridiculous preconceptions about what design is and what branding is, and I just need someone to do this pack for me, get on with it, you know. And if one can learn from the other, then that can only be a good thing. But how to actually physically teach it is quite difficult. That's quite a challenge, yeah. There are some advertising agencies who do have a blinkered view of what design does and what design is and what branding can do, yes. I do think that things have changed. So I'll give you an example. In the 90s, say for example, it was very in vogue for advertising agencies to get certain designers to art direct their adverts for them. So sort of pick them up, use them for a few months and then drop them again, really as stylists. And I was never very happy with that as a way forward, because designers were just being employed as decorators, to come and paint your house and then go again. And when you wanted a new paint effect, you would choose another interior designer. And I was never happy with that way of thinking. I think that now that designers and advertisers, certainly in the UK, are being forced to talk to each other, forced to collaborate. This is led by clients in the UK. Clients are fed up with it a lot of the time and don't want to have some silly boardroom battle. They want everyone to agree. So they either force the issue and so you have client, design consultancy, advertising agency in one room and they all agree, or, and this happens quite a lot now, the designer appoints the design consultant, we work out what the brand is, what it stands for, what it should look like, and then we start the discussion about the advertising. Being third in the list, sometimes agencies hate that because they're not in control. So you could understand how that would be an issue, but it makes more sense to do the strategic bit, i.e. the brand first, before you do the tactical bit, i.e. the advertising. And advertising is often pretending it's strategic, but actually it's usually tactical. I.e., something we're going to do now for the next 3 months, next 6 months, that will either work or it won't. But you can't take that view. You have to take a longer term view with branding and the positioning of a company. You can't change every 6 months.